Freeview puts live television in your pocket.
While Kindle Unlimited tries to fulfill every bookworm's wildest dreams.
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Alcatel.
Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm joined by a man who swears he voted for Kodos, Adam Turner. We're also joined once again by Finder.com.au Editor-in-Chief Angus Kidman. Angus, welcome back to the show.
Always a pleasure, gentlemen.
Adam, what's new in tech?
The death of Aussie streaming service Presto is reportedly costing Foxtel $21 million as it plans to buy out co-owner 7 West Media and pull the plug in January. Presto had 130,000 paying subscribers as of September, which the pay TV giant is hoping to lure across to its Foxtel Play streaming service.
Apple Pay is coming to yet more banks, but don't get overly excited. While 31 new financial institutions are set to adopt Apple Pay, they're all essentially customers of Cuscal, the financial card handler that handles card matters for smaller banks and credit unions. The big three banks and Apple, they're still at loggerheads over Apple Pay issues, so no change there.
Facebook's plans to boost internet access include a squadron of solar-powered planes able to fly at high altitudes for months at a time. With the wingspan of a Boeing 737 but weighing less than 500 kilos, the planes could form the backbone in the sky to rival the cable rollouts, according to Facebook's chief technology officer.
Google has opened up its Android Auto platform to anyone with an Android smartphone running Android 5 or better. You're advised to have a screen mount, and in fact it's a legal requirement if you're a driver only in Australia, and preferably Bluetooth capability to make the most of Google's automotive-focused Android Auto interface. So Adam, Facebook wants to bring Wi-Fi to the sky, and they're certainly not the first, and I suspect they won't be the last, but is all of this just pie-in-the-sky thinking?
Yeah, there seems to be a long list of people who want to bring internet to the masses, and obviously they've got a bit of a vested interest in doing that. You can't be on Facebook if you're not online. We've had Google put balloons up in there. Facebook had a satellite, but I think they splashed the bird, and I'm not sure if there are plans to try and put another satellite up there. But now they're talking about these huge squadrons of planes just floating over America. It doesn't sound disturbing at all considering recent events. Gus, what are your thoughts on these things?
I think, while I get the commercial incentive, this notion that we're going to solve these problems by putting things in the sky is really, really problematic. Let's not forget the other important news development this week, the guy in Australia who's got busted for using a drone to connect a sausage from his local Bunnings. If you can't put one drone out there to collect a sausage, well, how are you going to fill the sky up with planes? So, that's genuinely the issue with trying to do these things. Satellites go a long way up into very regulated airspace. There's not room for where you want to have your solar-powered planes hanging around, I would suggest.
I wonder if it's something of a patent or a we did it first so we've got the rights for when the technology actually works kind of play. Because everyone seems to be experimenting with these ideas, and typically they talk about them for bringing internet access to where there genuinely isn't internet access. I mean, Facebook's had a long-running and not terribly successful, as I understand, push into India for universal internet access, and albeit not via solar-powered planes as far as I'm aware. So I wonder if it's not just that they want to get the technology up there so that when someone does actually crack it and go, right, this is how we'll do this, and suddenly an awful lot of other issues around, for example, mobile spectrum might fall away, that they've got that legal standing there.
How terribly cynical and highly likely.
So, Alex, books lovers have something to be excited about. Amazon's bringing its Kindle Unlimited service to Australia, all the books you can eat, so to speak. Is this as good as it sounds?
In a word, no.
Oh.
Sadly, look. While it's very tempting and very easy to kind of to declare it the Netflix of books, and in some ways that is the model that they're chasing. It's a huge library of books, and as someone who loves reading and who loves books, I love the idea of Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah.
Which, to explain it in a nutshell, $13.99 a month. You get access to. They talk of it up to 1 million books on Kindle. Now, when I say on Kindle, that doesn't mean you've got to have a physical Kindle e-reader, because there are Kindle apps for every smartphone, your laptop, pretty much anything that isn't a Kobo, basically. Yeah. And it's a monthly subscription fee, which they compare to the price of a book, and they're not wrong in that. And we even get a very, very slight benefit. I crunched the numbers on this because in the States, the Kindle Unlimited service there runs $10 US. You do the currency conversion and you add GST, and they're actually paying ever so slightly more than we are, which is kind of rare until you look at the details, because the devil is always in the details.
Yeah.
And the version of Kindle Unlimited we get here is surprisingly limited. Specifically, it's books only. US Kindle Unlimited is books, it's Audible, so spoken word books as well, and it's magazines. We don't get the spoken word books, we don't get the magazines, and the numbers would appear to be different. But this isn't actually the biggest problem, because obviously, if you can get $14 worth of reading out of it, it's fine. But having played around with the service, it's almost that classic Netflix problem. You think, hey, I want to watch this. So you go searching for whatever this is. Invariably, it's high.
It's not there.
Face it.
Yeah.
And it's not there.
Yeah.
Well, this is the problem. I mean, Amazon, of course, still sell all of these books, and they will find them for you. But unless they've got that little Kindle Unlimited tag on them, they're not yours free to read. So having surfed around a bunch of my favourite science fiction authors, a bunch of my favourite comedy authors, a bunch of non-fiction categories, there's stuff out there, but a lot of it is not the premium stuff, and there's an awful lot of current stuff that isn't there. You could get some value out of it, and they're headlining it by saying, oh, well, we've got Australian authors and all of Harry Potter is there, and that's fine. But I would suggest that an awful lot of people who are keen on that kind of content material
already own it.
Probably, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, yeah. And then you're right, there is that Netflix problem. The thing I figured out with Netflix very quickly is you don't think, oh, I want to watch this, and you go look for it because it won't be there. What you do is you say, hey, Netflix, what have you got? And you choose from what they've got to offer. And I think probably this will be the same. You'll be more satisfied if you look at its suggestions and choose something rather than going for a particular book. Do we know, will things drop in and out of the library the way they do with Netflix? Because that's another problem with Netflix. You can't assume everything's going to be there tomorrow just because it was there today.
Well, that's up to the authors and the publishers. I mean, essentially whoever holds the publishing rights. And there's certainly a lot of discussion in authors groups about whether or not Kindle Unlimited is actually worth it, in the same way that, you know, musicians argue about whether or not Spotify is worth it.
Yeah, and this is what concerns me about all these services. How, as an author, are you supposed to make money out of them becomes the big challenge. The fact that there's less good stuff on there, I think, reflects the reality that authors creating content is not as expensive. If you've made a TV show and you've spent several $100,000 doing an episode, at some point selling the residual rights to Netflix to get a bit more money makes sense, but the model for authors is different. So I think some of them are going to go, hang on, we're not really charging very much for this in the first place. Didn't cost us much more than sweat equity to write it. It's just not in our interest at this stage to get in there. And as you say, book readers are a bit different. Possibly the book readers who didn't want to pay for things were already just very organised users of their local library.
Yeah, I know it's an uncool thing to say as a content provider, but that whole it's not fair on the people who provide the content thing sort of doesn't sit well with me sometimes, because, well, look at Spotify for an example, right? The industry said, don't steal music. And we said, why? How can you make it better? They said, all right, well, here's Spotify. So we went, all right, okay, we'll use Spotify. Hey, this is great. And then people said, oh, Spotify is terrible. People are not getting paid enough. And it's like, well, but I'm doing the right thing. It's not my fault that that's the case. Do you know what I mean? If they want people to do the right thing, and then when you do the right thing, apparently it's still the wrong thing. But like I said, I know that's, as a content provider, I'm not supposed to say that kind of thing.
It's a tricky balancing act, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's face it, you know, the music industry is rather infamous for the quality of its contracts, and I'm led to believe the publishing world might be fairly similar.
But when someone reads one of my stories on the Sydney Morning Herald, no one gives a stuff how much I got paid. No one's like, oh, did Adam get paid enough for this? They don't care. They're like, well, that's between Adam and the Sydney Morning Herald. Obviously, they figured that out. Obviously, they came to some kind of arrangement, or one of them would have walked away. I'm doing the right thing here. Leave me alone.
So what you're saying is that you would gladly accept brown paper envelopes from any of your readers at this point in time?
I may have hinted at it, but I didn't say it outright.
The other thing that this is suggested, or certainly it's been rumoured this week, is that Amazon will widen its service offerings in Australia. There's been the suggestion that its Prime service, at least as it pertains to streaming media and video, will launch towards the end of the month, theoretically when the new It's Not Top Gear in Anything But Name Clarkson Hamilton May series The Grand Tour starts. And then the suggestion, I think it was in the AFR, that next September we'll see actual full Amazon for everything down to the vegetables you want to buy at your supermarket kind of thing. What do we think around that?
The full store thing, go out on a limb. That's not happening the way it's been described.
Yeah.
Like, that's all based on one rumor from one guy. I don't doubt Amazon want to expand. I wouldn't be surprised if they started selling more goods here. But the time it takes to set up these kind of warehouses is measured in years. It took Aldi 3 years to set up to do distribution for fresh stuff in South Australia, in one state. I just don't believe that you could go out and rent that stuff and have it ready to go next September and not have lots of evidence leaking of that now. So on that front, I don't know. As a precursor to Prime streaming, bit more likely, your big battle there is how do you get the rights back, largely from Foxtel, who tend to own most of the streaming rights for everything you want to see. So, and you've also got Stan slicing in there nicely. So it's a sensible foot in the door, and I think they might be treating it like that, but I feel like it's further away than we're all assuming.
And that's the pain that Netflix went through as well. That they licensed things to Foxtel, like House of Cards, and then came to Australia and went, oh crap, what are we going to do? I guess we better take it back from them. So yeah, there is that awkward situation. Has things like Man in the High Castle screened in Australia yet? Has anyone actually picked it up? I don't know.
I don't think for that. We know that there have been specific series. Stan have had quite a few things that have come in. Certainly they get Transparent, which is on Prime. Yeah. They had various others. But it seems like they're tightening down. The reality is, if they were picking up the Grand Tour, we'd have heard about it by now.
And they would want to hype that series pretty heavily. Because I can't imagine, given what Amazon's paid for it, that they're going to sell it to anyone particularly cheaply.
The other thing with Prime is one of the big things I think about Prime in the US is free delivery. And that's a whole big different challenge in Australia than it is to the US in terms of population density and stuff like that. So I don't see how they could completely replicate, as you say, Gus, completely replicate the Prime experience in Australia.
Indeed. They might not need to. Some people might go, look, I'm happy to have something that was marginally more efficient, but as long as Australia Post and or couriers are involved, it's always going to be more than a little bit disappointing.
So, Adam, your friends at Freeview are at it again.
Yes.
And specifically, they've launched their all-seeing, all-dancing, all-in-one application, Freeview FV. Explain what it is.
Well, what it is in a nutshell is they've taken all the live streams from the 5 major broadcasters in Australia and put them in one app. And I have to say that it's not a bad job. The Freeview's never met an idea that it couldn't screw up. And so I have to admit that...
That's you off the Christmas card list, I think.
Yes. That's a list I was never on. But yeah, they actually haven't done too bad a job of it. The app is available for... I think it looks like there's a separate iPhone and iPad app. There's an Android app, but I think it might be a one-size-fits-all because it doesn't look so great on my Nexus 7. It just looks like it's been stretched off a smartphone.
So every Android app ever.
Yeah. I believe there's a commitment to an updated version for tablets early next year, I think they said.
Okay. And so you've got... It's kind of weird because I keep seeing people say there are 16 channels available, but I counted it twice and it's 19. So I don't know what they're saying that I'm not. But I also know that when you start the app, it asks where are you in the country. And if you don't let it use your GPS, it asks for your postcode. The postcode that you put in will determine which channels you see. Because I had someone on the Gold Coast or Sunshine Coast or wherever they were going, why isn't Channel 7 in there? And I said, no, I can see Channel 7. We figured out when they changed their postcode to Brisbane, hey, they had Channel 7. So yes, you still are getting a bit of that sort of regional argy-barginess. But the streams seem to be okay. All the networks are in there. They've got their primary channels, pretty much all of their secondary channels, not the shopping channels though. It's on a 30 to 60 second delay, that's the way the technology works. It's not like they've deliberately done that. Picture quality seems to be pretty good. The catch up is, I think, not great. They make it sound like all the catch up is built into the app, but what happens is you search through the catch up library and you say, oh, there's the Big Bang Theory, I want to watch that. So it then launches 9 Now, and then you're in the homepage of 9 Now, and so you've got to go and search for the Big Bang Theory. It's like, well, why the hell did I bother?
And that's presuming that you actually have, as I discovered when I installed it myself, that's presuming that you actually have all of those apps installed on your device of choice. If you don't, it'll then just throw you to your relevant app store and say, hey, you really should install this. Which, that's not a great setup. When you say all the channels are there, Channel 10's only kind of just there.
Yeah, they are, Channel 10 is not really getting in the spirit of this thing, let's put it that way. All the channels will have the occasional gaps, and they're usually due to sports rights. Which again is not necessarily Freeview's fault directly. It's the way our rights deals work. It happens to streaming radio as well. When the football's on, you get to listen to elevator music. That's just the way of things at the moment. But Channel 10, for some reason, seems to have said, screw it, where you can't watch MASH. Hogan's Heroes, not for you. It's like, I think
that's premium content.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it is for
run.
Channel 10, yeah. But there just seems to be this big gap. It's almost like during the day, they've said you can watch the morning shows and then you can't watch anything until dinner time. And I saw it described somewhere as a strategic move by Channel 10. Strategic move to look like jerks, perhaps? I'm not sure. But I don't see...
move to save money on server space.
Well, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I can see how it would be maybe. Because that's the thing. You might be getting this for free, but it is costing them money to set up the server infrastructure on the back end. So you're right. The more they serve, the more it costs them.
Yeah.
But Channel 10, I'm surprised. I mean, this is Freeview, right? It's a freaking miracle this app is out there at all, right? It is, one of the marvels of the modern age that this lot who would rather cut each other's throats than work together against Netflix have actually managed to do this app. They've been talking about it for 7 years, right? And then instead they came out with Stan and Presto, and we've all seen how that's worked out so far. So they deserve credit for, pulling their finger out and making it happen. Yes, there's work to be done. Yes, Channel 10 only seems to be a bit half-hearted about it. But I'm actually surprised it's as good as it is.
Yeah, I mean, Channel 10 cares the least about the distinction between its channels. It does so much cross-repetition at certain times of the day between 10, 1 and 11. I'm not totally surprised that they've got a minimalist approach. It's sort of where they're going. I remain astounded at the focus of this, given what we alluded to earlier. What things do you really want to watch live during your commute anyway?
Yeah.
At that point, you'd be better off doing catch-up, and it doesn't work. And we've just had all the upfronts announcing everything that everyone's doing next year. So look forward to a smorgasbord of annoying reality television is what commercial networks have essentially promised us. And most of those things, they're like sport in that the only point in watching the block is to watch it live and whinge about it a lot on social media. I mean, that's what the experience is about. And I don't see how they're really cutting into this in an effective way. So I understand all the reasons why they couldn't do it any better, but I'm going to be amazed if this is sitting at the top of the App Store ratings for terribly long.
I can't see people using it that much for commuting. I don't know if you've ever been off sick or worked from home and seen some daytime television. There's only rubbish on at sort of 8:30 in the morning and 5:30 in the afternoon. If you're gonna watch something on your phone, you're gonna watch Netflix. You're gonna watch catch-up TV. You're gonna watch anything but bloody Wheel of Fortune or whatever the hell's on. So I don't see how they think it's going to work as commuting. Sport's the one the most, or maybe just times in the house where you're away from an aerial socket. Aerials aren't as, there was a time where you had a couple of TVs in the house, you all hooked them up to the aerial because there was no other way to get anything on them, and that was it. But these days, if you've got a monitor in the spare room or this or that, you can sort of think of scenarios where you go, actually, I would sit down within my own house and watch it that way for 20 minutes or half an hour, rather than have to move to where an aerial is.
But I think you could just, at that point, just take yourself down into the YouTube rabbit hole and just forget about it.
Well, that just about wraps it up for another episode of Vertical Hold. Remember, if you've got any comments, hit us up in the comments section on YouTube, via Twitter, or the Facebook Vertical Hold page. Thanks to Gus for joining us.
Thanks for tolerating me.
Thanks everyone for listening, and remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Alcatel.